topic for today is all about environmental policy. So, I hope you enjoy and you will learn something from this video. Environmental policy. Environmental policy provides a framework for the environment and natural resource use. An adequate economic structure and a social security could be established for the needs of society. The purpose of environmental management is to ensure that national economy utilize the natural resources efficiently, where they monitor if the people who are using or utilizing the natural resources, if they abused it or they overused our natural resources. Necessary goods are manufactured and necessary services are received. Pollution is reduced to the level which is not harmful to human health and ecosystem. The environmental management. Environmental policy has more general and broader function that environmental management, which provides the practical implementation of the environmental policy. Environmental resource management is a purposeful activity with the goal to maintain and improve the state of an environmental resource affected by human activities. Environmental resources management aims to ensure that ecosystem services are protected and maintained for equitable use by future human generations, and also maintain ecosystem integrity as an end in itself by taking into consideration ecological, ethical, economic, and scientific variables. Environmental resource management tries to identify the factors that have a stake in the conflicts that may rise between meeting the needs and protecting the resources. So we have here an example of the improved agricultural practices such as these terraces in the northwest Loa can serve to preserve soil and improve water quality. So their terraces was designed to preserve the soil and improve the water quality. So, environmental policy and management. Environmental policy provides a framework for setting objectives and tasks for environmental protection and for ensuring the improvement of environmental quality. So we have here the environmental policy consists of several interrelated stages that form a cycle. So in stage 1, the government or the agency that is assigned for taking good care of our environment will start to formulate a policy. And then in the stage 2, implementation of the policy will be addressed. And the stage 3, putting the policy into effect. And then in the stage 4, of course, the monitoring, because our government or agency that is assigned for taking good care of our environment, after they formulate or after the body would agree after implementing, they should and they must monitor it. Because, for example, you allow your students to engage in tree planting, and you as a teacher, after they plant, they must go back there in the place where they plant and to check if the plant that they planted is really growing or it exists. And then after monitoring, evaluation of the policy, and then define a problem. So after the monitoring, it should be evaluated. And of course, in evaluation, we cannot say that our policy is really 100% accurate, or we cannot say that we hit what we expect there there are some there are sometimes there is also another problem that will exist, and then that another problem will if that another problem will exist. So that is the time we will back on the formation of the policy, then the implementation, and the cycle goes. The key environmental problems. So we have here the air quality standard in the major cities are frequently exceeded, and transport emission make the largest proportion of the air pollution. Eutrophication of inland waters in increasing, and it's largely caused by agricultural activity. This factor, in turn, adversely affect water quality in the Baltic Sea. In a situation of economic crisis, the use of the recycled materials can cause problem. Planning documents for the economic sectors do not sufficiently reflect various environmental factors, society lack of understanding about the dependence of long-term availability of natural resources, the lack of long-term systematic or scientific studies on the potential impact of climate change on the environment, and the lack of funding to control the compliance with the statutory requirements. Communication in environmental policy. Solving of environmental problems directly depends on the level of society knowledge on environmental protection. Of course, if the certain group living in the community don't have any knowledge on how to protect the environment, so how would they formulate, or how would they act if they don't know? So they need to be educated. Environmental education and communication are the main tools of raising public awareness. Communication is an ongoing two-way exchange of information between decision makers and the general public. The most important communication functions are to make information available to public, to draw public attention to specific issues and problems, to involve the public in discussing and solving specific problems, to facilitate changes in the public behavior, and to solve information on a new development, promote the exchange of ideas and knowledge. Environmental education is one of the most important means of raising public environmental awareness in the progress towards a sustainable society. The role of environmental education is to promote community development in a way that would harmonize the spiritual and material needs and interests, to increase substantially the public sense of responsibility involving citizens and society in environmental conservation and rehabilitation, to educate the public about the environment and nature, raising the level of knowledge and self-education opportunities, to involve the responsibilities organizations, educational system, experts, and enthusiasts in the process of environmental education, thus supporting the national and local initiatives. Environmental education. Environmental education justify the need for mobilizing financial resources for environmental policy challenges. Environmental education, decision making, and practical activities are based on research and knowledge of environmental science. Environmental education and environmental science are a foundation for setting environmental policy and social sustainability goals and dealing with problems. Environmental education is needed in order to make a possible drafting and implementation of laws and regulations, addressing internationally significant environmental problems at the local level, studying the environmental equality, developing new environmental technologies, ensuring protection of the environment in general. Environmental education at schools, environmental education and education for sustainable development are generally integrated into various subjects according to their specific content, ensuring the continuity and coordination in various stages of education. Just like us, we took this environmental science course. Research, development, and the use of knowledge and environmentally sound technologies is the principal economic development path that can ensure sustained prosperity. It is essential to develop exact principles for the content and objectives of environmental education and science. Environmental studies should focus not only on knowledge acquisition and research proficiency, but also on the skills to identify and address environmental protection problems significant for society. So we have here a diagram showing the juvenile fish bypass system by which allow young salmon steelhead for safely past the Rock Red Hydro Project in Washington. So based on what you have seen, so the design of this bypass system is really pinag-isipan in order to protect as well the species or the salmon in the sea. The public environmental awareness. Environmental education is forming environmental awareness because if we have already gathered knowledge, learnings, and we are now knowledgeable about the environment, so we are going to be aware on our surroundings if there are something wrong or something to be addressed like that. So they use the environmental awareness. They have the environmental awareness in Latvia. So they undergo research and survey, and then this is the outcome. Environmental management system. Environmental protection is a set of measures of environmental quality preservation and sustainable use of natural resources, whereas its purpose is to eliminate, mitigate, or prevent environmental damage. Environmental management system is a continuously repeated cycle of planning, implementation, outcome evaluation, and more precise definition and improvement of further action. The set of measures includes the planning of the overall process, starting with the environmental situation assessment for the purpose of setting goals, action required for pilot project run for the purpose of gaining experience and becoming prepared for the main task. Control of the process and situation changes including monitoring to make adjustment if necessary. Implementation of the process to achieve the set objectives, evaluating performance, and regular intervals to determine whether the achievement matched the plan. So before the certain policy is being made, there is an objectives that needed to be hit. So we have here the scheme of the General Environmental Protection System. So first, agreement on the vision and its approval. It followed by determination of the problems and their causes. And then setting objectives, of course, the very important. The problem prioritization, and then followed by the approval of objectives, determination of the conditions for action, development of program to accomplish objectives, implementation and control of the action plan, further development of the process. So, doing the environmental policy is not that easy or not that kabilis na ma-approve because it's undergo meetings, and many more discussion before it will be approved. The discussion and approval of the environmental policy vision to initiate an integrated environmental management, first of all, there must be such desire. Of course, if something has a desire, they are willing to do such things. And the possible initiators are the deputies, business representatives, citizens groups, non-governmental organization, of course, the state or the local government leaders. Regardless of what caused the initial impetus, leaders must be ready to listen and to prepare adequate documentation for starting the process to resolve issues relating to financial resources and administrative involvement. Environmental information has a major role in environmental policy, development, and environmental management system operation. Information comprises knowledge and data. Data are being obtained through environmental studies, statistical information, and a long-term and systemic observation of environment, society, and its activities. Environmental information should enlighten the scientists, politicians, and persons working in environmental management so that they would be able to make the correct policy decision, matching the actual situation and the environmental challenges in the region, and to make well-founded and rational environmental protection and management measures. So we have here the ozone estimated trend. So the data show predict a reduction approximately 2 or more per year in the central and northwestern Europe. Smaller reduction are predicted outside the region. Determination of environmental problems. People should be interrogated as what kind of environmental problems they see and how, in their opinion, these problems should be ordered by the importance. Such information can be obtained from population survey by listening to the views of elected deputies and by other methods. Estimations regarding future problems should also be made. Some of these problems can affect the entire country, such as a sharp increase in packaging material waste due to the increased import of goods or growing road traffic intensity due to the increased number of cars. So the sources of information are, of course, the Ministry of Environment, the local government, the Central Statistical Bureau of Latvia. Why I'm saying Latvia here? Because some of because this is a study showing the statistical or the environmental policy of that certain country, and then the European Environmental Agency. So in their country, they have already published a book where a book which entitled, a policy, the entitled The State of World 2014 Governing the for Sustainability, and then the World March Institute, the State of the World 2015 Confronting Hidden Threats to Sustainability. So it is good that the government or the policymakers are doing their best to help our environment to preserve itself, because what will happen to human beings if the environment will be destroyed or be damaged? How would other species will survive and live if they can no longer access to the nature that being made by our creator? Objective analysis and subjective analysis. Any observer is more or less subjective, and any perception is influenced by the manner in which an observation or measurement is made. Some method of objective analysis could apply to particular component of the environment such as water or to the specific pollutant. In the case of subjective analysis, the opinions of the society and citizen as what they perceive as environmental problems are ascertained. Although this type of information does not give complete picture because the respondents usually do not mention problems that cannot be seen or felt, it may give some directions where to look for the environmental damage. So we have here a Boeing 747-400 passes close to the houses shortly before landing at the London Heathrow Airport. So the noise or sound pollution, the sound tube in the Melbourne, Australia, designed to reduce roadway noise without distracting from the area's aesthetics. So very nice, no, that the government can make this kind of tube to reduce the roadway noise. So I hope that our country would apply this one also, but it sounds to be impossible, but why not? Why not to believe that someday? So, setting environmental policy objectives. Environmental policy objectives reflect society's expectation about the future. So, the policy objectives are scientific, social, it could be short term, it could be long term, and cultural. Environmental policy objectives do not always need to be measured or evaluated quantitatively or against some previously accepted standard or criteria. Even more important, the objective should include environmental philosophy, which should underpin the vision even if its development has been entrusted to the experts. Evaluating the environmental problems can be sorted in order of importance by several criteria. So the first one is how much the pollution level exceed the standards. How big the cost of environmental damage elimination will be. What the expected expenses for healthcare or other important areas are. So one of the most widespread method is comparative risk analysis of pollution, health, environmental protection, and quality of living conditions. Problems are ranked taking into account the selected criteria and mutual agreement on acceptable level of risk. Strategic environmental impact assessment. The strategic impact assessment should be performed for those planning documents whose implementation can significantly affect human health and environment, including the planning documents in the areas of agriculture, forestry, fisheries, energy industry, transport, waste management, water management, telecommunications, tourism, and mining, as well as planning documents related to regional development, land use, spatial planning, and the use of EU co-financing. The strategic environmental impact assessment procedure ensure that the developers of various planning documents are responsible for assessing how the implementation of these documents would affect the environment and for introducing the draft documents and the environmental reports contained there to the public so that the latter could express opinions. So in Europe, the Convention of Environmental Impact Assessment in the transboundary context, that's so-called ESPO Convention, laid the foundations for introduction of C in 1991. In 2003, the ESPO Convention was supplemented by the Protocol on Strategic Environmental Assessment. The EUC Directive 2001-42-EC required that all member states of EU or Europe should have ratified the directive into their own country. So, the development of the programs. The development of an environmental program is initiated to the basis of the analysis performed and objective set. The program may contain separate plans or project and a variety of methods to ensure information exchange. legislative compliance, and economic conformity. Projects can be carried out by the institutions or organizations that have won the state or local government tenders. So the development of the programs accomplishing a certain objective, the agricultural pollution discharge into stream, river, and lakes can be reduced in rural areas. Another objective could be related to the diversification of regional economic by attracting tourists. A clean river with nature trails and opportunities to observe wildlife could draw the attention of the tourist. And at the same time, a certain balance should be kept in order to avoid the rise of new conflicts between tourists and nature. So, for example, if the river is used for water sports development, it can adversely affect the fauna of the river. Additional difficulties and new challenges may arise, and they have to be dealt to avoid contradictions in the overall execution of the environmental program. So, there are a lot of environmental program like water activities, right? So, we can use the environment in our as part of the development, but in whatever may happen, the the certain policymakers should dwell on that problem, and they should make action since that is their job, and then they must ensure that if they must ensure that the environment will not be affected on that program that they are trying to im, trying to create for the development. The policy cycle and indicators. The main function of indicator is to provide information during the decision-making process and to adjust different level of policy according to the policy cycle scheme. So the makers are called indicators. They will prepare a policy, they will formulate, and the implementation it will undergo to the assessment, and the cycle goes. The use of sustainable development indicators in such a scheme is focused on the interaction links between the traditional indicators, but the synergistic effect in such a complex system are stronger as the direct cause effect interaction. So in Europe environmental management, many EU countries have low environmental protection traditions, which are also reflected in their environmental law. In some countries, for example, in the Mediterranean, environmental protection issues have received less attention. So, hindi masyado napapansin doon sa Mediterranean. Increasing integration of the Europe requires supporting the implementation of the most effective environmental policies at much larger scale. It is also necessary to ensure a common framework of environmental law, uniform monitoring methodology, and standard. So, thank you for listening. So, I hope you all learned something from this video. Thank you and God bless.